All right, John. So here's a quick video so you can kind of see what the power supply looks like. I like it because it's got a dedicated power button, and then it also has on/off for the output channel. When the output is turned off, you can set your voltage and your current to whatever you want. So this is the course adjustment, so it goes basically down from like 1 volt to about 30 volts. And then your fine adjustment is underneath that right here, and you can see you can go all the way down. Uh, looks about like 1 and 3 volts is the fine adjustment. So you can dial in a voltage pretty good here. It's like I'll set it to like 2 volts. Your current limit has again your coarse and your fine adjustment. So then current, you can crank it all the way up to 10 amps, and I'll set it to 100 milliamps. Ballpark. So like there, if I wanted to use the fine knob, now I could change it very slightly. So you can kind of dial it in. Now, I will say that's the one kind of weakness here is the current limit. When I measured it, it's good to about 100 milliamps, but less than that, it's the tens of milliamps isn't always accurately reported. It's sometimes reports a little higher off. So about 100 milliamps accuracy on this. The voltage is a little bit better, although it does have some pretty. It's a little bit noisy peak to peak, but it's normally within 1 volt, and it's good enough for my application. So with this is set to 2 volts and 100 milliamps, I'll go ahead and turn it on. So if I hit the on button, now the power supply kind of switches over to like a monitoring mode. So it will tell you what the current voltage is, what the current is, what the power in watts is, just as a quick little multiplication for you, and that it will tell you whether or not it's tripping constant voltage or constant current. So right now it's being voltage limit. It's got a voltage limit of 2 volts, and it's drawing about 86 milliamps, which if we go over here to the scope, you can see, here, let me just change the trigger. So there you go. You can see that's the output. It is a little bit noisy. I mean, all basically digital switching power supplies are pretty noisy, but if you pay a lot of money, you can get like a linear regulated power supply, which won't have this sort of ripple in it, which is more characteristic of the digital ones. Like I said, for my case, it's okay, and the reported RMS is actually pretty good when it's voltage limit. So it's 2 volts RMS, and it's reporting 2.01. Although that peak to peak that you see is about 1 volt peak to peak. So that again, if you're working with like really sensitive electronics, you'd want a linear regulator. But for like just most shop work, I mean, 1 volt peak to peak is not the end of the world. I've also been measuring the current, and I did test this multimeter. It's pretty accurate, or at least as many significant digits as report. So it's about 84 and a half milliohms, and you can see that the display is saying 86 milliohms. So pretty good. The multiplication for watts is always it's awfully, like, if you multiply those numbers together, it's not quite right. I think there's like a little bit of internal precision that's you get some rounding error there, but it's ballpark right for the wattage. It's off by like a couple tens of digits again. I don't know why. Or I guess that would be hundredth. Yeah, tens and hundredths. So it's off by like a couple hundredths of a watt. Okay, so that's when it's under current. When it's under voltage limits, it works pretty well. When you start to current limit it's not as accurate anymore. So if I dial down, so again, I'm changing the fine voltage, or I'm sorry, the fine current limit. I can't see it on the display. If I wanted to see it, I would have to turn it off, and then when I do that, I could kind of see what I'm setting it to. So I'll go ahead and set it down to like here we go, 46 milliamps. It should be current limited, and if I turn it back on, you can see that ramps up there. That's another thing. The ramp up here isn't too sharp, so it shouldn't have like a voltage or current spike when it turns on. Originally, it's pretty smooth when it turns on and off. It's just doesn't always limit at the appropriate current setting. So here it's saying 46 milliamps, but if we go down here, you can see it's actually limiting it at like 71 milliamps. So again, for sensitive electronics, it's not good, but for like, as far as current limiting goes, but for like general shop work, I mean, it's off by, you know, like 50 milliamps. It's not even 50 milliamps. It's like 30 milliamps. So it's not the end of the world for what I use it for. And the voltage, you can see, gets a little bit worse too when it's current limited. Currently, it's reporting a 1.69 RMS with a 1.2 volt peak to peak, and the display is saying 1.73 volts. So it gets a little bit more higher peak to peak, which is to be expected, and then also the reporting on the RMS is a little bit off between the display when it's current limited, but kind of still, within, what is that, 0.2 of a volt, so no big deal there. And I will say I'm kind of testing that it's at the very bottom of the power supply, which is where it's going to have the hardest time being accurate. So as you start to move more into like the 5 volts, 10 volts, or higher range, it shouldn't be as big of an issue. I will say though, you'll always kind of see the 1 volt peak to peak. But when you're 5 volts, or higher, it's not as, I would say, relevant. So that's kind of the power supply. It's also 300 watts limited, and I have tested it. You can get 300 watts out of this. You can actually get a little bit more. So it's not like super high power, but I liked it because it's accurate enough to do kind of some electronics work if you're working on like stuff like low power stuff. You can kind of get your measurements real quick, and it's fairly accurate for what I do. And then it's also got enough power in it where like you're not just working with like a 5 volts. You can charge like lithium ion batteries on this, which I do quite often. It works well for that, and I don't have to fire up the scope or the meter. I can just set everything here and track the power over time, which is nice. It does have a ground pin. I don't really use it. And then the last thing I'd want to say is for the what was I gonna say? I was gonna say something. Forgot. Forgot what I was gonna say. Oh, but yeah, it works pretty. Oh, yeah. Last thing I was gonna say, it has a little 5 volt 2 amp USB thing. I thought this was kind of gimmicky when I got it, and I don't use it that often, but when I do use it, it's really handy. What I generally use that for is I have like a USB cable, and I splice out the ends, and so I can kind of use this as an additional 5 volt 5 volt 2 amp power supply, which is enough to run most like USB devices, and it works independently of the power supply, so you can kind of draw a little extra power from here and use it to power like 2 devices, and I have used that like when I'm testing out like charging like little or like using like little voltage regulators. I'll power the voltage regulators with the USB, and then I can have another piece of equipment being powered from the alligator clips coming off of it. Okay, so that's about it. Yeah, so not super accurate, but pretty decent for the price, and a lot more accurate than, especially when it's voltage limited, it's a lot more accurate than I would have thought it would be. All right, thanks. Bye.